You know what? There is nothing worse than reading through a book and finding that it isn't for you, but it happens a lot. And I'm going to talk about a series that I really couldn't get into despite all of the people who were telling me it was amazing. I promised I would talk about it, so I'm going to. Okay, the series I am going to talk about is probably going to get a lot of fantasy fans going, oh my god, she actually said that. And that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. Now, don't get me wrong, I know she is supremely popular. Looking at the Wikipedia page just for that first book, it was nominated and kind of won and was placed multiple times between the year that it was released in 2015 and 2021 on count the best 25 YA books of this year, the best fantasy books, the best young adult romance books, A Court of Mist and Fury, Wings and Ruin, Thorns and Roses, the series, A Court of Frost and Starlight. They appeared on Bustle, BuzzFeed, Cosmopolitan, Pop Sugar, Business Insider, and Wired's charts. So that means that there are loads of people out there that like them. There is no denying they are very popular. I think it was even optioned for a series by Hulu with Ronald D. Moore leading the brigade, but I believe that has since been cancelled due to multiple reasons, and I believe one of them is Hulu's funding has fallen through. However, for that series, not for the whole thing. I mean, Hulu's part of Disney. It's not going to go bye-bye very, very quickly. Though I do believe that they have merged their platforms in the US. But that is neither here nor there. I'm here to talk about my experience of reading the books. A couple of years ago, I finally took the plunge and joined Bookstagram. My account is very, very quiet. I'm active only when I've got something to post, which is probably not a good thing when I think about it. And my follower count is relatively low, but I have people that I chat with regularly, and therefore I get a lot of recommendations. When I first joined the platform, the very first thing I noticed was how often this particular series of books with the bright covers was appearing on people's feeds. And I mean, it was everywhere, and it still is. People talk about how that moment where you open A Court of Mist and Fury for the first time in a year. It's like, first time in a year? Are you rereading this? How many times have you read this book? And so I thought there has to be something in it. People won't be just rereading this because if it's awful, right? So after quite a while and speaking with a friend who was like, oh my god, it's such an amazing series. If you love fantasy, you're going to really enjoy it. Her characters are great. Cannot talk enough about Rhysand and Farah and oh my god, that thing with Tamlin, which at that moment in time didn't mean anything to me. So last January 2023, I took the plunge and purchased the entire 5-book series. I know that it's not complete, and I also know that it kind of ties in with the other 2 series, Crescent City and the Throne of Glass series that she also has on the go. Wow, she must have so much time to write. I can't even finish an article for work. But anyway, that's not important. Though I would like to know how she schedules all her writing in. It would be interesting to know because those books are chunky. Anyhow, go back to January. I purchased all 5 books. They were delivered in a great big box, which was a tad intimidating. And I thought, oh my god, here's my next series. I cannot wait. And that afternoon, I immediately started reading A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I got through it pretty quickly. I think it arrived on the Saturday. I finished it on the Sunday. And I immediately picked up A Court of Mist and Fury. I wasn't sure at that point, A, what I was getting into, and B, if I really wanted to read the second book, because already I wasn't a fan of the characters. I couldn't hear them. And I'm not sure if every reader is like this, but when I read a book, I like to get to know the characters. I like to hear them in my head. I want to not have conversations with them because that's a little bit weird, but I want to be able to get to know who they are and understand their motivations. But this book, these characters at that moment, obviously it was Tamlin and it was Farah, and the relationship she had with her sisters and her father was a bit empty, and that felt very fairy tale. And obviously she was the Cinderella, she was the skilled one who did all the work while her sisters sat around judging her. Fair enough, you need to have that sympathetic relationship with your main character to understand why they're going to do what they do. But then I just finished the book and I felt, well, I'm not sure if I really like this. So I had a conversation with a friend who'd said, oh my God, this is amazing. It's my favourite series. And I said to her, I'm not sure. What did you like about it? And she said, oh, well, the first book isn't really where it's at. It's the second book when things get going. And the second book, obviously, Court of Mist and Fury, is considerably larger than A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I thought, okay, so the second book is where it's at. I'll read that. It's over 600 pages, but I'll get through that in no time. I am quite a quick reader, but not always, as proved to be the case with this particular book. And I thought, okay. I was about halfway through. She was in the court of Rhysand and they'd been going out for walks, and there was political conversation about the court, the night court and everything else. And I thought, not sure. Still not sure. And at that point, midway through February, I put A Court of Mist and Fury down, left it on the bookcase, and that is where it stayed for nearly 9 months. 9 solid months. I didn't feel any inclination to pick it up. I just wasn't feeling the story. I didn't care about the characters, still didn't care about the characters. Farah annoyed me a lot. Tamlin, obviously, he was a whiny little boy with a mask on. And then there was Rhysand, and it was like, I don't know. This is not what I signed up for. This isn't what I expected. All these people raving about this book and talking about how amazing it was, and I just couldn't see it. So I put the book down and left it, went away, and then I spoke with my friend again, and it was getting towards the end of last year, and I still hadn't had any inclination to pick it up. The other 3 books were sitting on my shelf going, are you going to read us? Are you going to read us? As all my books do, because they've been there a while. And I thought, no, I don't think I am. So I spoke with my friend and I said, look, when does the story start happening? This is just really naff exposition. There's nothing here. It's a very dead feeling thing. Nothing's going on. And she said, oh, it's the last 200 pages. When you get to the last 200 pages of Mist and Fury, it's amazing. You just have to wait for that. And I'm thinking, so I've got to read through about 900 pages of book to get to the story. And my first thought was, no, I'm out. This is it. I'm out. I'm done. And I nearly gave up. That's not saying I didn't. I just nearly gave up. So finally, we get to 9-month point and I picked up Mist and Fury and I finished those last 300 pages. Because I expected something to happen, I didn't feel as though I'd been given what I was promised. And I said to my friend, this isn't for me. And I don't think any of her stuff is for me. It's that the writing is just, it felt quite juvenile in many ways. I know that a lot of it's not only fantasy books, a lot of books feel like they are written for a younger audience. And despite the very suggestive scenes that appear throughout both A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, and a lot of other books that are targeted at the younger or new adult audience, this one just didn't feel like it was, the characters were formed well enough, the relationships weren't what I expected them to be. And I think I'd gone in with such high expectations because all these people had raved and ranted about how incredible the books were that I ended up being hugely disappointed. So when I finally finished, and it took me a while to finally get to the end of A Court of Mist and Fury, I put the book down and actually put the entire series on a shelf in sight to remind me that I needed to either take them to a charity shop or sell them. I think ultimately Sarah J Maas, her writing is not for me. And I'm saying that having loved Fourth Wing, but not so much Iron Flame. It suffered a little bit from sequel syndrome, but it just was lacking in something. Partially because I couldn't hear the characters. I didn't understand their motivations for anything. I didn't like them as people. Everyone's like, oh, Rhysand, he's my dream. He's my book boyfriend. And I just didn't get it. And I don't know if it's because I was in my late 40s when I read it. I don't think that's the case, because books are for everybody. They are universal. Or if it's just the fact that for me, the writing was not just, it wasn't there for me. So I have got A Throne of Glass, just the first book. I learnt my lesson. I have got the first book of A Throne of Glass. A Throne of Glass is on my shelf, waiting to be read. But I'm kind of burned by my experience with A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I don't know whether to pick it up. I know that a lot of people have said you need to read Assassin's Blade, I believe is the prequel, and then things don't really start going until the second book of the series. But if that's the case, why is the second book of the series the second book and not the first? What's the purpose of the first book? That, I suppose, is my question. If things don't start happening until then, why wasn't the first book just a prologue? And that is where I stand. I would love for people to tell me that it gets better, that Throne of Glass is worth reading and it can be read without thinking I've got to buy the other 12 books in the series. And does the writing improve? I'm not saying she's a bad writer. She's just not someone that I actually like. I would love to hear your comments. So please let me know down below what you think. Do you share my opinion? Do you think that it's the fantastic book everybody has been claiming it is? Did it deserve all these places on the top 25, the top 10 books of the year, especially for fantasy and young adult? Or is there something better you think I should read? And as usual, please like, comment and subscribe. I would love to hear from you. And thank you for listening to my TED Talk on my reasons why I have not finished the A Court of Thorns and Roses series.